All right, so we're going to go into the second session for this morning, which is a discussion, a panel discussion. And it's our privilege to get 3 EM pastors who are currently serving EFC, okay? They're our family, our pastors. So I want to introduce you to Pastor Casey from EFC Irvine. Let's give them a hand. Pastor Joe from EV, East Valley. Another Pastor Joe from New Life, Toronto. 所以今天早上我们用的方式是一个bilingual，然后他们要怎么回答都可以。那有没有人听不懂英文的？ Oh, this is great. Okay. Yeah, all right. 一位，好，那我们待会会把一个耳机给你。Just kidding. No. Okay. Yeah, it's never the other way around, right? 通常都是讲英文的听耳机，讲中文的不用听耳机。But it's okay. So what we're gonna do is, I will do half of the translation. 我会做一点简单的翻译。所以如果他们是用英文来讲的话，我就会做一些简单的翻译。那如果他们用中文来讲的话，我会用英文来做一点简单的翻译。Okay. 所以我们今天早上继续要探讨说 ，How do we connect? How do we close this gap? Okay, every church is different. 那我刚才分享的是 our church, Orange County 现在的 situation. 那这边代表了3个不同的教会，2个不同的国家。At first, I really wanted to invite someone from Australia and New Zealand. 不过因为我真的跟你们不太熟，所以 hopefully after this time, you know, 下次我就找 Gary 了。好 ，Gary 下次就来。So hopefully we'll get to know one another. 那其实刚刚讲到 culture gap， 对不对？ It's very interesting because before I came today, I was debating. Actually, I debated since last night what I was going to wear. 因为我不晓得说我要上台。通常我到大堂来的时候，我一定会穿西装，因为 that's just the way it is. Okay, to show respect. Okay, I know, you know, for the first generation, you have to dress up. Okay, 不过我有想到说 ，Okay, I have a lot of brothers with me on stage. 他们应该都不会 dress up. 所以 you know, 为了他们， so 为了他们，我决定说 ，Okay, I'll compromise. This is a compromise. Okay, 所以我又 casual， 有一个 jacket， 然后刚刚就看到 Pastor Joe, like, I mean, what are you doing? 然后他就跟我讲了。 I'm showing respect for First Generation. Thank you, Pastor Joe. All right, so when we start, I'm going to start with the first question. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background? You know, when did you come here, or were you born here? What church you go to? What role? And then maybe your ministry background as well. 告诉我们一下你的名字，然后哪个教会你服侍的经验和你的一些 background， 知道认识你一下。Casey.
Well, good morning, everybody. I can speak a little bit of Chinese, but since this is an EM panel, I think it would be more appropriate for me to conduct it in English, since there are also speakers that understand only English. So my name is Casey Liu, and I was born in Taiwan, Taipei, and I immigrated to America in '88 when I was 8 years old. And so I came here for 3rd grade. But I've always been since my teenage years, always came to this church, and so I kind of retained my Chinese. I didn't come here in the English ministry, because when I came, I didn't know how to speak English. So starting at the age of 13, when I started attending OC here, I was always on the Mandarin side. And so, and also my background, I graduated from UCI as an art major, so I worked as a graphic designer for a few years, and then I went to Biola and then Fuller for my theological studies. And prior to being the English pastor, I feel like I have this very weird ministry route, if you will. In 2005, I went back to Taiwan with a missionary mindset to evangelize and do outreach. And so in 2005 to 2006, we were part of a church planting team to plant Neihu Taifu Jiaohui. And then when I came back, I was ready to kind of like, I was so, to me, I didn't feel like I did a good job, and I felt like I was burnt out. So when I came back, I felt like I was done with ministry for a while. I said, God, just let me rest for a few years. But then 2 months later, Elder Tom approached me to say, hey, you know, if you want to come to and join GLEC, and I was debating for a long time, but finally, I believe the Lord led me there. And I本来想说 commit for maybe 2 years, 3 years. Ended up 9 years at GLEC with Chou牧师. And then after that, I transitioned into local pastoring at the EM at EFC Irvine. So this is my 3rd year as an EM pastor. So that's my background.
So Pastor Casey, 他是在台湾长大，3年级就来到美国。我刚刚就有听到说，他说他 very strange 还 weird， 他很奇怪的一个人。他的服事经验蛮丰富的。他曾经到台湾去植堂，他去那边的时候植了内湖台福基督教会，那现在还在。那他回来以后呢，跟周牧师到普世丰盛中心去服事了9年之多。目前他在爱恩台福基督教会在当英语的牧师，现在有3年半左右了。
But on the 3rd year, yeah.
3rd year, on the 3rd year, 第3年。All right, Joe.
All right. Hello. Again, my name is Joe. I was born in the States 1982 at Garfield Medical Center in Monterey Park. So I was born here. I'm a U.S. citizen, and I grew up going to church. My parents helped plant EFC. Back then it was called Montebello, and now it's called EFC Alhambra. And so I grew up in the system, in the EFC system. You know, junior high, high school. I had a really great pastor, Pastor Jim Cummings, for those that have been around EFC for a while, and he left to do mission work in China and Taiwan. But that really influenced me to consider doing full-time ministry. I went to up north, Northern California for college, and that was a really dark time for me. In my exploring of my freedom and independence, really walked away from God and the church. And afterwards, you know, moving back home with my parents, God had to use a 2nd-generation church to kind of bring me back in. A huge event in my spiritual walk was in 2006. My church at that time, New Song Church, the location in Fullerton, they sent people to New Orleans to do relief work for Hurricane Katrina. It was there that I believe God spoke to me and invited me to do full-time ministry. And at that time, I believe it was for mission work. And so the rest of that year, I was just signing up for every single short-term mission trip there was. I went back to New Orleans. I did an urban plunge here in downtown LA. And then my first international mission trip was to Kazakhstan. And at the end of that trip at Kazakhstan, I think God was convicting me to say, hey, you just want to do this short-term mission thing and you want that high from missions, but I want you to be equipped. And so I signed up to do seminary work, and I went to Talbot. 2nd year of Talbot, I was looking for opportunities. If you don't know, in seminary, you need to intern. And so at that time, New Song did not have a position. And through some old friends in the EFC circle, they were saying that East Valley was looking for a college counselor. And so in 2009, I came back to the EFC churches, East Valley, as the college counselor, finished up my remaining 2 years at Talbot. And right now, I've just finished up my 5th year full-time. The first 3 years was as the student ministry pastor, so a youth pastor, and I'm finishing up my 2nd year as the English pastor right now. I'm a father of 1. My son's gonna turn 2 next month, and I married someone who grew up at EFC East Valley, and we are gonna celebrate our 5-year anniversary next month.
Pastor Chou 他在成长过程当中曾经去北加州读书，不过回来的时候呢，经过一些 tough time， 所以他是就是我们所说的 second gen， 他去了美国教会，他去了 Asian American 教会去 New Song， 然后在那边然后重新再回到神的面前，然后在2009年的时候回到了东岸台福基督教会，那现在在里面服侍。You've been there 5 years too, huh?
5 years full time, but since 2009.
Yeah, well, 5 years full time is you need a celebration.
about the same time as Will. And so I'm 1.5 generation. I have been in this church for 7.5 years. This is my 8th year. So our board is doing something right. And I had a business. I was a businessman for quite a while before God called me into ministry. And in fact, New Life Gospel Church, I helped found the church a while ago. And so at that time, it just happened to have an opening for a youth pastor. I mean, I always have passion for young people, even though I'm older. So I was hired as an English pastor. I'm married. I have 3 children. My oldest daughter is in last year university. My youngest one is 12 years old. Love to play basketball. You know, I always believe that looking after young people or teenagers, it doesn't mean you have to be young. You got to be young in heart. And I think, you know, young people actually realize and recognize the fact that you really care about them. They don't look at your age. They don't look at the white hair on your hair, on your head. They just look at your love for them.
Thank you, Mr. Joe. Did you say you came to the U.S. or went to Canada? You went to Canada. 所以他跟我差不多在13岁左右到 Canada， 然后他在那边成长。那现在看到 EFC New Life， 他是从一开始的时候 founding member 就在那边了。那他有3个小孩，最大的现在大学最后1年，最小的才12岁而已。So very exciting. I want to ask you guys about your church, okay? Because now we know you're from Irvine, East Valley, and New Life. But a lot of people don't know, you know, your structure. How many congregations do you have? You know, as an EM pastor, how big is your congregation? And so on. So just tell us a little bit about your church structure. Maybe also share with us about your board. Okay, how do you do your elders and deacons?
Yeah. Right. So I'll go first. So right now I work with Pastor Hu Zhonglun 牧师, and under his leadership and covering our church is roughly about 550 overall right now. And we have 5 different congregations. Our EM runs roughly 80 to 90 people, and our Taiwanese is around 160, and Mandarin, I think 120 to 130, or 1.5, 120 to 130, and our children, roughly 60 people, so we have 5 congregations. And the age group within each congregation, much like EFCOC, is all the way junior high to grandpas. So 12 to about 60, with mostly families, parents with their teenagers. It's a lot like that. And then the Taiwanese ministry, probably 50 to 90 years old, I think. You know, we have representatives here. Mandarin, maybe 40 to 70. And then 1.5 is 20 to 45. That would be my guess. And then the CM, obviously, K through 6. So that's about the church. And the elder deacon board, I think we have roughly 30 elders and deacons, right? Yeah, 35? 30? Yeah. But on the English side, we have currently active 1 elder and 1 deacon. And so we can, but we have our own EM core team that helps out with the EM. But as you can see, the ratio on the ED board is very small. Yeah.
Thank you. Because of time, and they share a lot of numbers, so I'm not going to memorize that. So we'll just continue. Okay, so hopefully you can catch most of it. So Joe?
All right, so at East Valley, on Sundays we have about 300 people coming out. About roughly is 200 on the Taiwanese side and 100 on the English. And then we also have a children's ministry that runs, in addition to toddlers, so that's about 20, 25 people. And so those are kind of the breakdowns. On the English side, we are counting everyone from these children all the way up to married families that have kids that are in junior high, high school. That's kind of our range on the English side. And some of the Taiwanese actually come in and join if their kids are in the English. Some of them have chosen to either come to the English service only, or actually they go to both services. In regards to our leadership structure, this year on our board we have 20 elders and deacons, and it's very interesting because it's split right down the middle for Taiwanese and English leadership. We have 8 deacons on the English side, 8 deacons on the Taiwanese side, 2 elders on the English side, and 2 elders on the Taiwanese side, 2 full-time pastors. We have a minister, Minister Liu, who, because on the Taiwanese side, skews very much older, and so Minister Liu really takes care and visits our older members. And on the English side, which is, I think, a big part of the health of our church, is that we have 3 part-time counselors, one for junior high, one for high school, and one for college young adult.
Awesome. New Life, we have about 270 to 300 every week. Chinese side, we have about 150. The English side is about 110. And then we have about 30 children. The structure of the deacon board, we have about 20 elders and deacons. And we have 3 pastors, 3 full-time pastors, and we have a part-time retired caring pastor. And we have, in the elder board, we have 2 elders that are from the English congregation, and the other 3 or 4 from the Chinese congregation. But in our deacon board, we only have 1, maybe 2 from the 3. Well, 1 is children. Okay, but almost all of them are from the Chinese congregation.
Interesting. So when you guys decide what to do with your ministry, let's say EM, how high do you have to go? Do you have to talk to the elder deacon board to make a decision, or with Casey you have a 14? So who makes the everyday decisions in your ministry?
For us, Pastor Hu gives us a lot of freedom, and so basically we can pretty much decide on our own, and I run it by my core team leadership to see if they have any ideas or objections, but pretty much I'll lead whatever ministry ideas that we have.
My senior pastor, Pastor Huang, also gives me a lot of freedom. So a lot of decisions made on the English side, there's a trust level there. In regards to things that are more joint, we spend our weekly staff meetings talking and coordinating it. One thing that I wanted to mention is, I don't know if we'll talk about it later, but in addition to kind of being split right down the middle with representation, Taiwanese and English, is also Pastor Huang really intentionally structured our leadership a little differently, and it's really to raise up our English leaders. And we have divisions this year. We go by the EFC, we EFC, so those are the 5 departments, plus an admin aspect, which takes care of a lot of the, the back-end stuff. And on each of these divisions is 2 Taiwanese and 2 English leaders in there. And so there's a sense of it's being group-led and intentionally building relationships in the leadership between the Taiwanese and the English, and for our English to be really equipped to do these important things for the church. And so pastorally speaking, there's a lot of freedom for me, but also in regards to we're really trying to not see, hey, this is only English ministry, this is only Taiwanese, but really seeing this as one church and us working together on the English and Taiwanese side to be able to move forward together.
Yeah, it's just like that. I believe that Pastor Yao is our senior pastor, and he gave me also a lot of freedom, but I always go through him and ask for his ideas and suggestions. But ultimately, if I have certain specific ideas, I have to go through the board, the elder board, because they're the one who will decide whether it will go or not. But one thing I want to really explain to you, because I said, most of the deacons are from the Chinese congregation. So I have been pushing to have more young people coming into the deacon board. So last year, they proposed a change in the structure so that there's 4 departments, that ministry-related department, like education, caring, fellowship, and also worship, we decided every position will have 2 deacons, one from English side, one from Chinese side. And I think that's a breakthrough for us because, for us, for me, it's a lot of help. Otherwise, I have to do everything. I found that, that the board's starting to see the need of the next generation. And I think there's a change we have a lot of people coming. We have 9 people here today. And so I think people do care, like in the Chinese side or the English side, they do care about what's happening for the future.
To follow up on Joe's question with New Life, since you were there at the very beginning, and I know you mentioned to me that your church started as an English-speaking church. Can you just share with us, yesterday Dr. Ting also talked about how his church started as an English-speaking church, and they maintained to be English-speaking, and then they added Mandarin, and then they added Cantonese later on. So for your church, you started with English, and right now, somehow you flip over, and right now you're trying to flip back a little bit, right? In a way.
Actually, don't want to flip back. My senior pastor's here.
Moving on to the next question.
No, actually, this is a good question because when we started, our vision was to evangelize to the English-speaking. But what's interesting is that this is what we're hoping. But what God brought and what we hope for is different. So what happened is that the first few years of a lot of visa students that come around, and when people come into know Christ almost every day, every week, and then the church is growing steadily, and then we decided to hire a pastor from I think Pastor Susan Chou recommended Pastor Hu. I have to say that Pastor Hu, we miss him very much. He's a great pastor. Anyway, because he's such a gifted preacher, he attracted a lot of the Mandarin speaking. So as a result, we have more Mandarin speaking than the English. So initially we have English speaking and translate into Mandarin, then we flip. We become Mandarin speaking and translate into English. And so the Mandarin speaking is growing and the English speaking kind of stands still until we kind of split the 2.
I'm glad that you found a balance. And I think one thing, as they're speaking, 他们刚刚在分享的时候，我觉得有一件事情我看到 is that they all say that their senior pastor gave them a lot of freedom, right? And I experienced the same thing. I think my senior pastor, Pastor Chong, gave me a lot of freedom. He trusts me, and we co-work together very well. And I just noticed that perhaps that's one of the key too. To allow the second gen, or many of us are not second gen, but to allow the English ministers to have a little freedom to do what God's calling them to do. And a fun question before we get into another question is, you guys are English pastors, right? Do you consider yourself pastors for youth only?
No.
No.
Yeah.
No, because I'm old.
That's great.
I'll tell you, this is interesting because in our English ministry we have from junior high to family, and it's pretty much evenly distributed. We have junior high, high school, college, and young adults. We have 2 young adults group. One is second generation, one is 1.5 generation, and we have 4 or 5 family group. So we're kind of evenly distributed. So that's the reason why I have to say that English ministry is difficult. It's not a babysitting because every level, their needs are so different. And so you almost like you feel like you need to have a pastor in every age group. But you can't. Imagine, when I'm preaching, I have to preach to 14-year-old and 55-year-old. How do you preach? How can they connect? That's the tricky part.
My follow-up question was, go ahead.
Well, I just kind of want to add it up to that because prior to taking the EM position in 2015, I was kind of invited around 2013, but I didn't want to take the position because in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to be a babysitter. That's not my calling. I've been in missions for 9 years. We've been traveling the world. We've been, doing things around the world, and I've seen great things in the kingdom of God. I'm like, why would I go backwards and become a babysitter? But then, God had to change my mind on that And I had to ask around different EM pastors. I'm like, is this a babysitting job? If it is, I don't want it. But we have to see hope in a future for it in order for me to invest my life in it. And I think I do. You know, I'm still trying to figure it out since this is only my third year. But this is what I want to figure out. Is there a hope in a future for EM? Yeah.
Good. And my follow-up question was going to ask, has anyone called you a pastor?
Yes.
Has anyone called me a youth pastor?
Ever since you take on the EM position?
I don't know. No.
Never.
Because you're old. So that makes the difference too.
But then I would have to explain to them, like justifying, because I find myself more working with the parents nowadays and how to raise their kids, or if they have trouble with their kids, they'll come to me. So I find myself working with the adults even more, even though I do interact with the young people on Sundays. But in the middle of the week, the young people don't call me, but it's the parents.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Young people don't like you. You're too old.
Yeah, I'm too old for that.
I was talking about having joint services earlier, and I kind of want to hear how is that done at your church? And is translation a problem for the second gen at your church?
At our church, we have 2 joint services a year. It's the Friday, the Good Friday, and also the Christmas Eve. And those are the only 2. We used to have more. We lowered the number because of the precise reason that you said. When we have joint services, the EMs don't really show up. And so we try to minimize that. But we try to cultivate unity through other smaller events, not the big gatherings, but the smaller ones, like going on mission, like Water for 6K events, different events that actually have more opportunity for them to engage both ways.
Okay, at East Valley, for 2016, 2017, we had a lot of joint services, I believe 7 or 8 those years. And it was an intentional move and actually a point of pride for me. I think some English pastors, they really don't like joint services. And, I think during that time I was really sold out, and I continued to be, a one church model, and to be together, I was thinking, hey, we have to do this. We're one church. And so really trying our best to be able to make that experience good for both the first generation and the second. But there was an intentional move for 2018 to really scale it back. I think our senior pastor really saw, I think it's this idea to build unity. It's not just through these big events. Yes, you're going to lose English for those joint services. And so if that's the only way to build unity, then when we're in trouble. But we're scaling back this year. We're only doing 4 joint services. And actually, our senior pastor put on the calendar something really exciting, which is a Friday joint, and specifically it's going to be an outreach one. I think a lot of churches do vacation Bible camp during the summer, vacation Bible school, and so this year we're going to try to have the closing ceremony right on Friday, and then use that really as a place that these parents of these children can come. And I think we tried Sunday so many times, different ways, but it's just so busy on Sunday, and so we're trying to be more creative in regards to how we bring unity in our church, as well as how we do outreach, as one church as well. So, yeah.
And we used to have, way back we used to have joint once a month, and it's not popular. So when Pastor Yao came on, he decided that we're going to scrap that. We only have joint Christmas time, Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and Thanksgiving, okay? And that's it. We used to also have joint throughout the summer, but Pastor Yao again decided that we should do it separately. And I think it's a good move because the kids hated it. If you look at them, everybody was on the phone, and it's not together. And I found that, just like they're saying, there's a way that you can engage the two. We had a joint fellowship night about a month ago. So the deacon intentionally asked our English career group, both career group, to lead the game, to lead the worship. And that was a success. It was so good. And not only for the Chinese congregation, but for the English congregation, they feel like they're taking some kind of leadership and they're engaging in the total church. And I think that's the way to go.
Good. And to follow up on that, because we're the same. At OC, we also have 5. It's the same 5 as what Joe was talking about. And yeah, I shared earlier, it's a struggle for second gen, and I think we all share the same sentiment. But with your philosophy, again, there's no right or wrong models. Every church is different. But I kind of want to hear from you guys. Do you believe in the parallel? A lot of people do. Or do you believe one church? And how do you make that work?
In 2015, when I was being interviewed by our elder board, they asked me, what would be your vision for the EM if you do come in? Do you want to split off like a new song? Or do you want to remain, you know? And I'm thinking, well, I don't know, what do you guys want me to do, you know? I mean, you guys hired me to be an EM pastor, and so I'm here to be an EM pastor. I don't have an intention to split off unless you guys want me to, but I don't think that's the vision that we're going here. So I had to find a way for EM to work. And keep in mind, I was never involved in EM before this. I've always been in either the 1.5 or the Mandarin or an American church. And so this was a new experience for me. And because I live in Lake Forest, I live right by Saddleback, Ma'anfeng Jiahui. I have I'm very fortunate and lucky to be able to go to the Saddleback trainings, for example, their purpose-driven conferences. And so I've attended like 3, 4, 5 different conferences in the past 3 years and trying to learn how to make a church healthy. And so right now, the model that I'm doing is I'm trying to follow a purpose-driven model. Overall, our church kind of adopted bits and parts of the purpose-driven with the baseball diamond. And so on the English side, I'm trying to go farther, a bit farther. I want to see if the purpose-driven model works in an EM setting. So that's the process. And I hear that it takes about at least 3 years for implementation. And I'm on the 3rd year, but sometimes it'll take up to 5. So that's my journey. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't have an answer, but I'm trying to figure it out at this point, yeah.
For me personally, it's definitely my personal philosophy at East Valley, as well as how it's run, is definitely a one church model. Actually, 2 years ago, before I was hired on as an English pastor, there was a huge time of conversation of figuring out if this was the right place for me. If I think there's a sense of not knowing if I can do it, but more importantly, it was kind of the vision of the church. And during that time, I shared, before, back at that time before saying yes to the English pastorship, it was, I always had one foot out the door in regards to I want to do mission. So either urban mission or overseas mission, being a youth pastor for a while, it was just to do that until God called me and my family away. But during that time of deciding whether or not to stay and continue to work with the church, God showed me a vision that was within the walls of the church. At that time, and also really close to me now, is still the book of Ephesians, seeing the DNA of our church, the very first church. It was God putting it in the church that it would be enemies, Jews and Gentiles, under the same roof. And it doesn't make sense to any church growth models or anything like that. In fact, that's a very messy and probably the worst way you should do church. You should get like-minded people together, and that way you won't have to do, struggle through things like joint services and different cultural values always, coming to head. But God really showed me that this is his church. He wants different people there. And so I began to see that even though, EFC East Valley, we're all mostly Taiwanese, 90, 95%, But within the walls of the church, we have two different cultures at play. And a lot of times it could cause headaches and frustrations. But there's also a potential for love, of great love there. And it points me also to the 1 John passage of like, no one has ever seen God, but if you love each other deeply, then God's love will be made complete. And so as someone who always wanted to go somewhere else, somewhere exciting, overseas or the urban context, God showed me a wonderful vision of a mission at home. And that's why, for me, if our plan was parallel mission or that we would eventually plant, then I believe that I would have not said yes to being an English pastor. But because the church, amen, since the beginning, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary at East Valley next year. And the church from the beginning has done things that we're going to be one church all the way till now, making changes, in our leadership so that we are becoming more like one church model. That's the reason why I've stayed behind. And so definitely all out, one church model at East Valley.
Actually, we always talk about this in the EM, about having a separate board. A lot of the EM people talk about this. But the truth is that U.S. Lincoln Church basically is a separate church. And actually, in fact, many people feel like our church has two separate churches. And people don't interact. And I think there's something wrong with that. But this year, I'm really thankful because the chairperson of the board and some of the deacons, they see the needs to kind of integrate and kind of work together. So I can see the change in the leadership, and I think that's the key. If we really want to have only one board, the senior pastor and the elder board has to be the key to really lead, this direction. And I really don't think parallel works because you want to just go. There's no point having you sharing the same place. But one thing that I realize is that there's such a big difference in cultural thinking, the DNA of the congregation. We need to learn to change that. Otherwise, I think another way to do it is that you do church planting. I think that's a very good way to do it. Is that we always look at not just the church itself, we got to look at the kingdom of God. So we're called as a minister to the kingdom. So if God calls us to go to build another church elsewhere, then we go. And I think that's why I'm not so worried about people leaving the church, because as long as they are staying in the kingdom of God, I'm okay. Like everybody's different. We cannot please everybody. We only please Him.
Thank you. And I think that's great. I think one church, we are one church. And whether you're the local church or on the EFC level, we are one church. Sometimes we forget about that. And I think being in Southern California, it's a lot. We're very blessed to have so many churches locally that, I see them, at least once a month, if not more. And it's great. And for a lot of EFCs out there in different states or countries, it's difficult to, kind of grasp the idea that, hey, we are part of something greater. And I think that encourages us, that gives us support. Now, are you also experiencing the church aging issue at your church?
For us, because we have 5 congregations and it's pretty evenly distributed, of course, it's the Taiwanese that has the older generation, and we do see people, a lot of people actually going on to be with the Lord every year. I think we have at least one every month, right? And so, Pastor Amy Lynn's here, she knows. She's always conducting funerals and comforting the families. And so that's a big ministry at our church. And we use the opportunity, to minister to people. But they're also doing a very good job with community outreach. Actually, in my opinion, they're the most proactive at our church, the older Taiwanese congregation, because 有办社区大学、长春大学、长春团契, and so every week we see 20, 30 newcomers coming in for 这些社区活动. And I'm like, wow, my hat's off, because REM is not attracting that kind of number. And so even though they're losing 10, 12 people a year, on the other side, they're gaining through community outreach. Yeah.
And so when I say, do you think your church is aging? One of them was, is there a gap? Do you have a gap in your church that needs to be filled, age-wise, age range-wise, or you're pretty consistent all the way through?
Because each congregation kind of has an emphasis on each age. So, I mean, if we're only talking about the EM, yes, there is an age gap. We lack college students. We lack young adults. We have a lot of parents. We have a lot of teenagers. But if we look at church as a whole, then we have every age. It's just that they're in separate congregations. You see what I mean?
Yeah. I do. And I kind of want to pick on you a little more. Because for Irvine, they have a 1.5 generation. And I believe that's the only EFC that has 1.5 generation services. So do you think that contributes to the reason why young professionals can stay within your church?
Yes and no. I was part of the 1.5 since 2011. My wife was a college counselor in 1.5. And yes and no in this way. 1.5 congregation itself is not a bridge between EM and Mandarin. Because 1.5 will concentrate on 1.5 demographic. It doesn't really benefit the EM, and I don't know if it benefits the Mandarin. I don't know, because it seems pretty independent. Do they reach young adults, young professionals? Yes, the 1.5s, but not the EMs. So in what way is 1.5 a bridge? I would say people who are 1.5, who are willing to help out in the EM. Like I myself, I'm a 1.5 background, but I choose to serve in the EM. And in that sense, yes. And on our core team, there are 1.5s with 1.5 backgrounds that serve in the EM, but they don't necessarily come from the 1.5 generation congregation, if you will. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Joe?
In regards to the gap, I think one thing at East Valley is that there's a strong young adult contingency there. I think it might be difficult at other EFCs, a lot of drop off there, but I think because of the French's formed, because of early on wanting to pass on the church to the English, and structurally a lot of things going on, a lot of young adults have stuck around, and a lot of them are on the deacon, the board now. In regards to like older, one of our deacons is here, Deacon James, and one thing that he's done at our church is, number one, before he stepped up on leadership on the board, there was a prayer in the board for younger meaning like 40s and 50s, people in that age range to be able to step up and be leaders at our church. And I think there was a gap there. There's some really young English, straight out of college, and then very old, like Taiwanese elders and deacons. And we wanted people to be able to bridge that gap, and also people with energy that also understands both cultures. And so James was a part of that. But not only that, but he lives right in the city of Walnut, which East Valley is at, and his kids are part of a lot of different extracurriculars. And so he brought a lot of families from the community into our church, believers and also seekers. And so that's been really successful. And so we didn't really program that, but it's just really just willingness to invite people to come out. And so I think that's been a huge part of the English, because otherwise it'd just be young adult and below mostly. But because of what James has done in regards to inviting people out, we're getting families coming out on the English side too. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. But I know for EV, it's also very unique. The reason why we picked the three of them is because their church setting is a little different than most of us. I represent the traditional. I think OC is a very traditional EFC church. But for Joe's church, I believe, I might be wrong, but intentionally it's just Taiwanese and English. Right.
Yeah, so I've only been at East Valley since 2009, so barely 10 years. But yes, since I've been here, it's only really, on Sundays, it's only a Taiwanese service and an English service. What I've heard, in regards to, the structure of the church is that there's a push to pass on, the church from the Taiwanese to the English. One thing I want to say about that is it doesn't happen just naturally from these big decisions. We have the structure, but the thing is, it still takes relationship to make it happen. There's a desire both for the English and the Taiwanese to be one church, to pass the church along. There's no question. I know for a lot of churches, that's a battle in and of itself. It's taken care of from the beginning, right? But it's still a journey, and that journey is a relationship between the Taiwanese and the English, of being able to work out those cultural values of loving each other in the midst of those differences, and the training up of the generation to come. So again, even though I don't know if it's an intentional decision not to have another language, but even though there's only English and Taiwanese, there's still work to be done to pass it along.
In the English congregation, we have ages from junior high all the way to family, so it's fairly young and there's no gap. The only gap maybe is in the college side, because we have about maybe 20 kids going to university, attending school fellowship, going to churches in different campuses. But other than that, we have a very strong young adults group. We have two. The new one is really strong, second generation, and I consider them the future of the church. And then we have a fairly strong family group. We have right now 5 family groups. Recently we just started one with just a newly married marriage couples. So the Chinese side is also fairly young. Actually, we ranges from what we used to have a really fairly good young adults group in the Chinese side, but that kind of they kind of disbanded, and now their family group, the youngest is in their 30s, and a lot of them in their 40s and 50s. We do not have many older people, so there's not a lot of funeral. I think there's a lot of weddings. Baby dedication, we have a lot of baby dedication. Yeah.
Very good. Now we're going to get a little personal. So what do you think is the biggest challenge for you as a young pastor?
I think to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
For Ian, or for you?
For me.
For you.
I mean, for EMs in general, I think, and yeah, particularly, of course, me and the EM at our church, to see a concrete solution, right? Because right now I'm still kind of figuring things out, 还在摸索. And maybe it's because when I came in, I had an expectation of what it could be, But maybe in reality, this is what it is. So just trying to figure it out, because I talked to probably 10 different former EM pastors. They were either EM pastors currently, or Asian American pastors, or those who left the EM position. Because I would ask them, because they've been in it for much longer than I have. And I'm like, is there hope in EM? No hope. Forget it. Try that path. No. I'm like, what? Wow, I did not expect that. I mean, I thought, well, pastors should be kind of encouraging, right? Even if they're thinking no, maybe they should say yes, but they're just saying no, don't go that path. Tried it. I tried it, been there, done that. It ain't gonna work, And then finally, and ironically, I asked Pastor Dave Gibbons of New Song, and he's not in an EM situation, as you know. He's in a Pan-Asian American. Now it's multicultural, right? So he's not even an EM pastor, but he didn't say no to me, even though he himself is not in it. He said, it depends on your calling. Do you have a Pauline calling, or do you have a Paul's calling or Peter's calling? 你有保罗的呼召还是彼得的呼召？保罗是被呼召去外邦人 ，multicultural。彼得是 to the Jews， 犹太人， single culture, original traditional culture. And so how has God built you? What has God called you to be? You know, don't try to be a Paul if God called you to be a Peter, and don't try to be a Peter if God called you to be a Paul. And I think that really spoke to me because, I mean, for him, he had a Pauline calling, you know. He was multicultural, you know, mega church. And I'm like, well, it'd be nice, you know, do you have a position open for me, you know? But I really had to pray and say, you know, what's my root? Is that important to me? How am I built? What can I be effective in? And those are the questions I have to ask. And so this is where I landed. Yeah, but it was a big struggle figuring that out. Yeah.
The biggest struggle for me personally is, and I think it's a personal issue, is just running with endurance. Definitely whenever I talk about vision, I get really excited. I see that in the midst of difficulties, that God works in the impossible, right? If humans say, hey, you can't do immigrant family church, you know, you must plant out, that's the only way forward. So whenever it gets really difficult and I'm walking closely with God, I get more excited because I know that that's when God moves. But in the midst of all that, between, you know, being reminded of the vision is the week-to-week, day-to-day grind of being willing to understand, you know, I'm basically in between the two cultures. You know, I was born here, but my parents raised me very Taiwanese. And so there's a sense of, I think that's the only reason why I've been here for 5 years is because of my parents, you know.
That's why you wear a suit.
Oh, that's why I wear a suit. I always have to be very careful. But I think when I'm not walking closely with God, then I get a complaining heart. You know, a big weakness of mine, I'm a big people pleaser. Some people say I care too much about what people think of me. And so now I'm trying to balance two separate sets of expectations on me. The Taiwanese, what they see as a good pastor, the English, what they see as a good pastor. And so I remember just my first years of being full-time were just exhausting and really freezing up and not letting people in because I was just overwhelmed. Like, to please one person, yeah, maybe I can do that. Maybe a group of people that are similar. But then God shows me that stop complaining. Like, this is to show you that one person, a human being, cannot do it. This is my church. I'm the head of the church. So just do your part and learn from your Taiwanese brothers and sisters that serve hard, keep their head down without asking questions, right? And I think, I don't know if we're winding down, but I think that's one of the biggest things moving forward. Pastor Ting yesterday from the workshop that he put on was talking about mentorship. And I would say the big reason why I've stuck around now for 5 years is because I've formed relationships with fellow brothers and sisters on the Taiwanese side, that they've seen me as someone that they could pour into, that there's a relationship built. And so for me, I really see moving forward I want to see that for the English congregation, that we would truly not just say we're one church, but there'll be small gatherings where we have Taiwanese inviting some English members over, having a meal. You know, we have a lot of grandmas. I didn't answer the question, but we're an old church. Our senior parking is 70 and over. We had to move it from 65 years old all the way to 70 to park at the really nice parking, right? So we have an old church, and they've served the church for a long time, some of these grandmas and grandpas, but they're getting old. And so I was thinking, hey, maybe you can have small gatherings where these grandmas can teach some of our, you know, younger moms and women how to cook yupeng, right? And just to pass on that tradition. It doesn't have to be a big joint service, but these small gatherings where people are learning, doing life together, learning from each other. And that gives me a lot of excitement when I talk about it. But my weakness, again, is the day-to-day, you know, and that needing encouragement there. Yeah.
I have to say that I have a very good relationship with my pastoral staff, Pastor Yao and Pastor Enoch. They supported me a lot. We prayed together. And also, I appreciate our deacon and elder board. They're very open. And I found that my biggest challenge is not external, it's internal, it's me. And I found that, you know, just like Joe said, you know, you figure I grew up in this church, everything's fine. No. I actually, so many times I wanted to quit because it was so difficult. And you didn't realize how difficult it is unless you're in the ministry. But I'm so glad I did, because, you know, I pray and God said, you know, don't go until I tell you to go. And I realized that during that process, God actually was moving people, changing people. So the people that have problem with me, I see how they change. I see how they have become my coworkers. And I found that if I left, I wouldn't be able to experience God. So I found that the biggest challenge is that how do I become the person that God wants me to be, because I'm accountable to Him. And I realized one thing is that if I'm well as a pastor, my congregation will be well. So right now I'm receiving a mentorship from a pastor in another church. And we'll work on this spiritual formation and how inner healings or spiritual renewal on a daily basis, because the key is us. And I always tell people, we can complain a lot about the GA, the church, whatever, but you know what? If you are so close to Christ, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there's a problem outside. No, it's cool. So my challenge is me.
I didn't know you guys complain about GA.
We
never complain about GA.
Yeah, GA is the greatest. I have to say that I really appreciate it because I learned so much this last few days, really.
Yeah, I concur that. Because of time, I kind of want to, I have more questions to ask, but I kind of want to open this time to the audience first. If no one has a question, if everyone's kind of in Chinese, Taiwanese, then I'll ask more questions. But if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and then ask any one of them or all of them. It's fine. Anyone has any questions? Yes?
I have a question because you mentioned about the gap and how to bridge the gap in terms of unity. But I believe unity has many levels and different aspects. You mentioned about along the way that activity doesn't bring forth unity. There's something else. There are many different levels. I want to ask the question that what type of level, aspect of unity that you can create in a church? That's one question. Second question is related to that. I think the struggle we have EM is reflected in the bigger picture of EFCGA on a greater scale. Because there's this unity there, this unity right here. Because we understand the EM pastor here, and here maybe there's a gap. My question is that how to create that unity in both levels? And what can EFCGA do to help in that aspect?
This is a topic I think about all the time. How do we foster true unity? And I think, in my opinion, I think unity has to come through the same vision. Not just being in one space together. Being in one space together for service, I mean, all it means is a lot of people are gathering together. It doesn't mean that we have one vision to go towards what we have. So for example, what our church does, I'll just take Mexico Mission for example. Like we have a very clear objective, like this is the mission. We want to share the gospel. We want to help the poor. And so the people from different congregations, they have the same mindset, have the same vision. So when we go on a weekend trip, everybody's very unified. Everybody has one goal and one objective. And we know what we're trying to do because we have orientation. This is our objective. You know, it's not just us being together and having a good time as a team, but we have an objective, a kingdom objective. And one thing I'll say about GA is that yesterday they showed a video of what GA does. And I appreciate that video because I think prior to that video, I really don't know what GA does. I'm like, is GA supposed to do events? Is it supposed to do training? Is it supposed to, like, what is GA doing? I don't know. I have no idea. Even though, like, I guess we're all a part of GA in a sense, you know. But the video talked about this one sentence about GA exists to gather the resources of the local churches so that we can plant churches. And I find that clarifying. Like, okay, that's a vision that I can run with. If that's the vision of the GA, then I'm on board. You know what I'm saying? So I think clarifying the vision is so important for unity. Without that, it's just one big social club. That two or three different people with different cultures and ideas. Social club doesn't work. Yeah. We have that vision.
我用中文讲 ，OK？ 因为你们都是主任牧师，你们都是教会主要的同工。Sorry, we will translate.
You're awesome.
That's what I said. Andrew, you're awesome. 我觉得，其实是这样。我觉得一个教会或者一定要从头开始，就是上面开始。其实你们要是主任牧师，有这个看见，你可以影响你下面所有的人。其实我记得有一次那个监狱有跟我讲过一次，他说一个教会其实他并不需要一个 youth pastor， 只要一位主任牧师对第二代有负担就够了。其实我是觉得说主任牧师的 position 很重要，或者是你们长老 position 很重要，因为我觉得要是我们可以看到说第二代很重要。其实你知道吗？我 GA cancel 那个 bridging conference， 我觉得非常可惜。我不晓得为什么会 cancel， 难道说你们对北美下一代没有负担吗？我觉得应该不是嘛，对不对？因为都是你们的小孩子，对不对？你的小孩子是不是以后也需要去一个教会？还是说我跟你讲，在20年你们都老了，我也老了，只有他是最年轻的。在20年，你们知道说你们教会在哪里吗？要说你是50岁，你70岁了；要是你是60岁，你80岁了。你的教会要传给哪一代？那我GA也是一样，你GA你看看，在20年你会在哪里？要是我们现在不投资，你知道吗？我是一个生意人，要是我要这个部门我要把它起来，我会投资在这个部门，所以它会成长。我不会说你起来啊，你起来我再给你钱 ，no。所以我的意思就是说，我们就是要投资在下一代。其实我们全部的那个 EM 的那个牧师，很想要跟你们 engage。看说什么时候，你知道吗？上次的那个 Bridging Conference， 他是 James Chou， 他花了多少时间安排，然后请所有的主任牧师来，结果没有一个主任牧师来。我觉得这是 the problem。我觉得我们从上面要改变我们的想法，就是说，我们想说，到底我不是来这边是为我自己活啊，是为我的小孩子。你们来加拿大、来美国，都是为了你们的小孩子啊，信仰不是更大吗？所以我觉得我的意思就是，我们要从你们开始，就是从你们开始有这个远见，然后开始教育我们的弟兄姐妹，知道说我们的下一代是这么重要的。因为在20年我们坐在轮椅的时候，我也可以看到我的儿子在服侍神，不是很好吗？
So Andrew, once again, you said you're handsome. So basically, if you did not understand, Pastor Joe mentioned that if you want to start anything, you must start from the top. And senior pastor is at a level where you can influence the entire church. So if you want to see the next generation rise up, you got to start from the top. And to answer Joe your question too about Bridging Conference, I think, you know. 他比较美国化，所以他比较敢讲话。所以他刚刚讲的都是他自己的 opinion，OK？ 我不敢说什么主任牧师都没有来，就是 but that was the truth. He spoke the truth. OK， 我不会讲，他会讲，他帮我讲。I think you know we used to have a thing called Bridging Conference. 那一开始 Bridging Conference 的一个 purpose 就是说。 Bridge the two generations, and that was the goal. And we were very excited, but then we didn't see the result because it was one-sided. 讲英文的同工们很高兴都要去 Bridging Conference， 然后每次去到那边的时候，讲华语的牧长们比较少。Okay, I wouldn't say nobody, but it's very few. 所以到最后我们就觉得说 ，well, again, like my example earlier. Okay, if you voice your opinions and no one's listening, 然后每次都是开会，就是我们几个自己在讲完又回家了。Then we feel like, okay, there's no purpose. So that's why we stopped Bridging Conference. but I don't think that passion stopped. I think, within EFC, we all have that passion to continue on and to bridge between the generations and close that gap. So any other questions? Yes, you know.
I used to serve at EFC San Diego. I see the elders I used to serve at EFC San Diego. I saw the elders here, and then the pastor Louis. I think they have a good relationship. May I ask Louis to share something about EFC San Diego, about the English and Spanish side?
Yeah. Yeah, I think in San Diego, the elder board is definitely, and the council is definitely more open to English ministry. Not really, doesn't treat English ministry as children or kids or second thought. I think they're definitely open to change, open to collaboration, working together, delegating responsibility, or allowing English leaders to rise up. In the church right now, our English leaders, those who comprise of the core leadership, are former youth of mine. So they're in their mid-20s, are the leaders in the San Diego, in the English ministry San Diego church. So I think that makes a big difference. Why people want to stay in our church. We do have a good amount of young adults, which is the post-college to young families, so that 20 to 30 age range.
Thank you, Louis. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
I don't know if the deacon from the EFC NASA, Mr. Lian is here. Yeah, I think since the principal, the president of the local seminary, put an example there. I think there's an example from the EFC NASA. The deacon he's here, and I'm pretty sure his voice should be here. His voice should be heard. Among the EFC churches. 连弟兄，你要不要谈谈看，就是你的经验。Yeah. That's right. Because I don't think we will have another opportunities. Yeah.
I think it's a long process. But really, I would just echo a few comments here. Is you have to start from your leadership position and cast out the vision. And I think a few years back, in our co-worker meeting, we're talking about the EFC 2.0. And I think that is our process started. And I probably let Pastor Charlie to comment on a few things about his own experience of coming back to EFC NASA. We call this a
I don't know what to say, but I guess our church, okay, so what they have been trying to do is actually trying to slowly transition to a primary English model. And so our service right now is we only have one service from English to translate it into Chinese every Sunday, right? So when you guys are talking about joint services and how it doesn't work, in a way it can, but only if you quote unquote, if you force it on people enough, then they will kind of get. But then if the primary language is what they're used to, but obviously this is talking about the second generation, right? So actually it has been brought up to me very often that our older members, many of them have sat through services where they don't understand English, or they don't understand the sermon at all. But they have sat through weeks after weeks for a couple of years now. So that's what we're trying to do. And but obviously we are a smaller church still. We average around 90. And anyway, this works because we're small, right? I know the churches up, the 3 pastors on the stage, they are of considerably bigger size, right? So what we're doing, obviously, I'm not pretty sure it doesn't quite translate over, but the fact that the leadership at NASA decided to go into this model is because they see the second generation as absolutely necessary for the church to, whether you say survive or continue to exist, right? And I think, even whether it's GA level, whether it's at church level, very often, and even in the ministerial meeting earlier, I think the way I would say is very often the English-speaking, whether second generation or English-speaking pastor, we are a necessary inconvenience, right? We are necessary, but we create inconvenience because now everything has to be translated, right? So we come up with ways to accommodate. And I think, quote unquote, true change, whatever form it is, and in our cases, in NASA's case, we translate into this, dual language, but primary English, only because they see second generation as, absolutely necessary. Then they are forced to change, right? So, whether it's local church, whether it's GA, right, unless the people with power sees the English speaking as absolutely necessary, as opposed to, a necessary inconvenience, then I guess there will be struggles and issues at all levels, pretty much. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Charlie.
I do want to take 1 minute to thank Pastor Albany. He laid the foundation for our transition. And I think that each one of us have the part to become the part of the solution, not the part of the problem. And I'm very encouraged to listen to all your sharing.
And because of time, we have to stop here. Thanks. All right, so we're full of technology in this church. We're great. We just, yeah. So we're going to end here, but I just want to say one thing about GA. I think one thing will really sum up this is that during this past couple of days, I have heard some people saying that, hey, we're here, we're a larger church. Sometimes I don't understand why we have to give so much money to or tithe to GA. And my answer to them is always, for Orange County, we don't need anything from GA, to be honest. We are self-sufficient. We do have money. We have a great facility. Our ministries are great. We don't need resources from GA, but we tithe. But when we tithe back to GA, we know that that money is going to go to the smaller churches and help them to survive and to grow and thrive. And with that, we were happy to be part of GA because that's our mothership, and we want to see those smaller churches to grow. So I see it as an investment, and I think I can speak for our church. We invest into GA because we know that we want to see GA grow. And so a lot of people say 2020 is it just a calling, or are you actually going to put action to it? I think if we're all believers and we all want to see people being saved, I think that's the bottom line. And I hope we can continue to unite together. That's the key. Unite together, love one another, and doesn't matter which way you do your ministry, love is the most important thing. So I want to turn this time to Aaron Chuandao. Thank you, everybody.
现在。